expands the Supreme Court's scope of judicial power by mandating it to determine whether or not there has been a grave abuse of discretion amounting to lack or excess of jurisdiction on the part of any branch or instrumentality of the government. In the case of Angara versus Electoral Commission, Justice Jose P. Laurel, who later became the third president of the Republic, wrote, and I quote, "When the judiciary mediates to allocate constitutional boundaries, it does not assert any superiority over the other departments. It does not in reality nullify or invalidate an act of the legislature, but only asserts the solemn and sacred obligation assigned to it by the Constitution." Close quote. Noong pong tinatalakay ng ating mga constitutional framers ang probisyon sa konstitusyon patungkol po sa proseso ng impeachment, binanggit po ng kagalang-galang na Commissioner Dodong Maambong ang isang sipi mula sa isang kaso sa Amerika. Ang sabi po niya, and I quote, "Ang impeachment ay ang unang hakbang sa isang proseso ng pagwawasto. Ang layunin po nito ay hindi personal na pagpaparusa sa nasasakdal, bagkos ang pangunahing layunin nito ay panatilihin ang pamahalaang naaayon sa konstitusyon." This quote captures the heart of what impeachment is meant to be, Mr. President. It is not about personalities or punishment. It is about protecting the very structure of our constitutional democracy. And sometimes protecting that structure means accepting limits, even when we disagree with how those limits are drawn. In this case, the Supreme Court, as the final interpreter of our laws, has spoken unanimously, and I will say it again, spoken unanimously, decisively, and with finality. It ruled that the impeachment complaint violated the one-year bar rule. The Vice President was denied due process, and that this Senate, as of the moment, had not acquired jurisdiction. Mr. President, in closing, again, I would say we may not agree with every word of that ruling. But the rule of law is not a matter of convenience. It is the foundation of our democracy. Upholding it, even when it is difficult or unpopular, is what gives this institution its credibility and our democracy its strength. To ignore it, no matter how justified we may feel, is to risk eroding the very foundation we are sworn to defend, our beloved Constitution. Kaya po, Ginoong Pangulo, sa liwanag ng ating saligang batas at bilang paggalang sa pasya ng Korte Suprema, habang kinikilala po natin na may nakabinbing motion for reconsideration na sinampa ng House of Representatives, and in adhering to the immediately executory decision rendered by the Supreme Court, I vote to transfer the articles of impeachment to the archives. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Villar Camille.
Senator Camille Villar is recognized. You may proceed, ma'am.
Mr. President, my dear colleagues, I vote yes to the motion to archive the articles of impeachment against Vice President Sara Duterte, respecting the decision of the Supreme Court. It is undeniable that the Supreme Court has the power under the Constitution to declare an act of a co-equal body as unconstitutional, a power known as judicial review. The power allows the Supreme Court to ensure that all branches of the government act within the bounds of the Constitution, and it should be respected. The three main branches of our government, the legislative, executive, and judicial, each is vested with distinct powers and functions by the Constitution, none superior to others. Each operates independently with its own sphere of authority and serves as a check and balance on the others to prevent abuse of power. This is the foundation of our democracy, and it ensures the rule of law, accountability, and protection of rights of all Filipinos. In this case, the Supreme Court has spoken. By a unanimous vote, the Supreme Court declared, in clear and unequivocal terms, the articles of impeachment against Vice President Sara Duterte unconstitutional and null and void ab initio for violating the one-year bar rule and due process clause. As a result, the Senate did not acquire jurisdiction to constitute itself into an impeachment court. This decision, finally, is immediately executory. Mr. President, we have heard many good arguments in the recent weeks from both sides. Just today, being the youngest member of this robust body, I have learned so much from our esteemed and distinguished colleagues. But to me, it is simple. The opinion, or the most important opinion, is that of the final arbiter of our Constitution, and that is the Supreme Court. I have faith that the Supreme Court has done their duty and fulfilled their mandate. Being a legislator and a public servant, it is my duty to abide by that decision. Not too long ago, I took my oath of office as a senator, and I swore to support and defend the Constitution, and I adhere to that today. To do otherwise can lead to uncertainty and chaos, and even a constitutional crisis. This is what the rule of law expects from each and every one of us. And to respect the rule of law is to respect our democracy. And that is why I vote yes to the motion before us. Mr. President, dalangin ko sana na maresolba na natin ngayon ito upang mapagtuunan na natin ng pansin ang mga tunay at malalaking problema na hinaharap ng ating bansa at ng ating mga kababayan, katulad ng mataas na presyo ng bilihin, pagkaroon ng wastong hanap buhay, kalusugan at kaligtasan ng bawat Pilipino. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Senator Villar.
Senator Villar, Mark.
Senator Mark Villar is recognized. You may proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to vote yes and explain my vote on the matter before us, and to explain why we compromised today on archiving this very important topic. But of course, we must always remember that the status quo is that the Senate has no jurisdiction. So in legal speak, this complaint is null and void. Last July 25, the Supreme Court rendered a unanimous decision declaring the articles of impeachment against Vice President Sara Duterte unconstitutional, noting that it is barred by the one-year rule under the Constitution and that it violates due process. The merits of this decision are not an issue at issue before us. The sole question we need to answer is whether the Senate should respect the decision of the Supreme Court. And I say clearly and emphatically, yes. The Supreme Court has the ultimate authority to interpret what the Constitution is. No one, including the Senate, can substitute its opinion over the courts in any matter concerning the Constitution. And the Constitution itself, in Article 8, Section 1, entrenches the court's role in interpreting the Constitution and determining whether there has been a grave abuse of discretion amounting to lack or excess of jurisdiction by any branch or instrumentality of the government. This includes the Senate, even when acting as an impeachment tribunal. Justice Laurel laid down the doctrine in the Supreme Court as the final arbiter of constitutional issues in Angara versus Electoral Tribunal, where it was stated that when the judiciary mediates to allocate constitutional boundaries, it does not assert any superiority over the other departments. It does not in reality nullify or invalidate an act of the legislature, but only asserts the solemn and sacred obligation assigned to it by the Constitution to determine conflicting claims of authority under the Constitution. At dahil nagdesisyon na po ang Korte Suprema, tungkulin po ng Senado na sundin ang desisyon na ito. Sumasangayon man tayo o hindi, Dahil nangako tayo, bawat isa sa ating mga senador, that we will support and defend the Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines, that we commit to obeying all laws and legal orders issued by the duly constituted authorities. Nasa oath of office po natin ito. In staying true to our oath of office, we must abide by the order of the duly constituted authority in matters of the Constitution, the Supreme Court. We must uphold the Constitution. Thus, the Senate cannot acquire jurisdiction to proceed with the trial, much less issue a verdict. Tulad ng sabi ni Senior Associate Justice Leonen, the impeachment process is a constitutional process. And although it is also a political process, it is not isolated from the requirements of the Constitution as a whole. Kailangan obserbahan ang due process, ang tama at makatarungang proseso bago matanggal sa posisyon ang isang individual. Habang iginagalang natin ang opinyon at pananaw ng bawat isa sa mga importanteng usapin, kailangan natin igalang, kilalanin at bigyang halaga ang kakayahan at kaalaman ng mga maestrado ng kataas-taasang hukuman na binigyan ng kapangyarihan ng ating konstitusyon bilang huling hukom na ipaliwanag kung ano ang batas at kahulugan nito at magdesisyon ng pinal sa isyung ukol sa konstitusyon. By recognizing the authority of the Supreme Court on the matter, the Senate does not abandon its mandate and its wisdom as an independent political body, nor does it concede or submit to a co-equal branch of the government. We are simply upholding the rule of law. At kung susuway tayo sa desisyon ng Supreme Court sa isang isyung konstitusyonal, binabaliwala natin ang konstitusyon. Ito ay magdudulot ng isang krisis sa ating saligang batas at lipunan na hindi makakabuti para sa taong bayan. As a functional society governed by the rule of law, we must accord our democratic institutions with respect, value their guidance, recognize their competence, and cherish their independence. Mr. President, pinapatunayan ng desisyon na ito na makakaasa ang tao na ang due process ay hindi lang guni-guni o kasabihan walang katuturan. Na ang due process ay para sa lahat at hindi lang para sa mga kakampi. Isang patunay na mapabisi presidente man o ordinaryong Pilipino, makakasigurado tayo na ang mga institusyon, ang Korte Suprema at ang Senado ay handang ipagtanggol, pahalagahan at bantayan ang ating mga karapatan. Without the rule of law, people may act without accountability, government leaders may act on personal interest, individual rights can no longer be guaranteed. Without the rule of law, there can be no justice, no order, and no real democracy. To end, I would like to quote Supreme Court Senior Associate Justice Leonen, who penned the decision. There is a right way to do the right thing at the right time. This is what the rule of just law means. This is what fairness or due process of law means, even for impeachment. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Senator Villar. Before recognizing Senator Zubiri, I'd like to thank him for his patience because he's always last whenever we do nominal voting. At some point in time, you might want to make a motion, Senator Zubiri, for us to draw lots on which letter of the alphabet we will start voting.
Thank you.
The gentleman may proceed.
Maraming salamat, Mr. President. Alam mo po yun, Ginoong Pangulo, dahil magkasama po tayo sa Kongreso ng 3 termino. At dun sa 3 termino, na alam ko yung bilang po natin ay 265, 268 congressmen, napakahirap po pag ang iyong pangalan ay nagsisimula sa letrang Z. Kasi ako po ay palaging huli. Minsan po, wala na pong tao nakikinig sa akin. Yung janitor na po, mga page ang nag-aayos ng mga upuan. Pero, Subalit, na yung araw na ito, nagpapasalamat ako at napakarami pang senador na nandito po na yun. Nandito si Senator Bato, Senator Bong, Senator Robin Padilla, Senator Amy, Senator Erwin, Senator Mark Villar, our Senate President Pro Temp, who's not listening, but he's here with us today, together with the movant, Senator Marcoleta, and all the rest, no? Nandito ang dalawang Cayetano na kaibigan natin. Yung mga seatmates nandito and minority. Pero Mr. President, honestly, it pains me to vote against my minority floor leader. It pained me and Senator Lauren. But what we are called to do here today goes beyond a simple vote. We all know that, Mr. President. It goes beyond a simple vote. Rather, for me, it's a test of our commitment to our Constitution and the rule of law. When the House of Representatives transmitted the articles of impeachment to us in February 5, 2025, my position was clear. We must go ahead with the trial, as this is our constitutional duty. In many interviews, that's what I said. It doesn't matter how I feel about it, because many people already said that I was on the other side. But I've said it doesn't matter what my personal feelings are. What matters is that we proceed with our constitutional duty. When the motion to remand the articles of impeachment came up on June 10, 2025, it was also my position, again, clear, that we must remand the articles not for the sake of dismissing the trial, Mr. President, but for the purpose of ensuring that the House of Representatives had not violated the impeachment process as laid out in the Constitution. I have always upheld the principles of rule of law and the primacy of the Constitution. And I've consistently shown the highest respects for the Supreme Court as the final arbiter of all constitutional questions. So today, again, my position is clear. We must respectfully adhere to the Court's ruling that the current impeachment complaint is unconstitutional. Our Constitution expressly empowers the Supreme Court to review even the article or the actions of political branches. In Francisco versus House of Representatives, that case which has been mentioned by almost all my colleagues here, the court affirmed that it is the final arbiter for constitutional questions with authority to strike down acts that violate the Constitution. Thus, I vote to support the Supreme Court on not to proceed with the trial of the articles of impeachment as it violates both the Constitution and the guarantees of due process, rendering the current complaint unconstitutional and void ab initio. The grave denial of due process only magnifies its fatal defect. Without jurisdiction, any trial would be meaningless and any verdict null and void, Mr. President. To disregard the court's unanimous ruling would be to invite a constitutional crisis and to break our oath to support and defend our Constitution. The power of impeachment is not without limits, Mr. President, my dear colleagues. It must be exercised within the boundaries set by the Constitution as interpreted by the Supreme Court. And let me be clear for those listening tonight. The court did not place the Vice President beyond scrutiny. It simply required that any future impeachment follow constitutional safeguards. As simple as that. A new complaint may be filed by February 6, 2026, lawfully and with due process, at doon na po natin magagamit, Senator Kiko Pangilinan, yung ating mga gown at robe. Kasi sigurado, as the day will shine tomorrow, there will be an impeachment case filed against her. And we will be ready. This time, we will be prepared and follow the due process that was mentioned by the Supreme Court. I speak, Mr. President, as someone who's been a legislator for over 2 decades now, together with the Senate President, long enough to know that our fragile democracy rests on the strength of our laws, that our freedoms are given shape by our rules and traditions. And you all know me as a stickler for rules and traditions, together with my minority leader. I have served in both houses, House of Representatives and the Senate, and here in the Senate, being formerly a majority leader, the Senate President, and now your Deputy Minority Leader, in all these roles, Mr. President, I've been conscientious in adhering to the rules and traditions that protect the integrity of our beloved institution. It is in this spirit that I adhere to the court's decision. My vote today is based on the Supreme Court's decision last July 25, 2025, without prejudice to whatever resolution it may later render on the motion for consideration. That's why I thank the good movement, Mr. President, to allow me to amend or to allow the amendment of his motion to make it a mere archiving of the document, because that will never stop us from being able to pull out that document from the archives. Maraming salamat sa ating mahal na movement, si Senator Mark Villar. Let me just say this, Mr. President, to end my manifestation and my vote. Restraint is not weakness. It is obedience to constitutional order. Let us act not in defiance of, but in deference to the Constitution, to the Supreme Court, and to the people who have entrusted us these powers in this very chamber. Daghan kay salamat sa ako mga kaigsunan, and may God bless us all. Maraming salamat, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Zubiri. With 19 affirmative votes, 4 negative votes, 1 abstention, the motion of Senator Marcoleta, as amended by Senator Joel Villanueva, adhering to the immediately executory decision rendered by the Supreme Court en banc on July 25, 2025, which among others held that the articles of impeachment are null and void ab initio, and that the Senate did not acquire jurisdiction, and to move to transfer the articles of impeachment in relation to case number 002-2011, entitled "In the Matter of the Impeachment Trial of Vice President Sara Duterte," to the archives. The same is hereby approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, Senator Bam Aquino would like to insert his explanation of vote into the record.
So inserted as requested by Senator Bam Aquino
And
into
together
the
with
records,
Senator J.V. Ejercito, Mr.
as well as that of Senator J.V. Ejercito. What is the pleasure of the Honorable Panglidan?
Yes, just a parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President. If I recall, in previous votes, we first get the results of the vote before we go through an explanation of the vote. It seems like we have changed the process of voting.
That was upon the motion of Senator Zubiri earlier, which the chair explained before we put the matter to a vote.
But I raised this question because, well, the reason why, at least the practice was, the votes first before the explanation is that at times when there are contentious voting, the quorum may suddenly disappear, or there will no longer be a quorum because of the long process of voting. So
The gentleman is correct unless a member asks that the procedure we just adopted is instead followed, and in this particular instance, the Honorable Zubiri moved without objection from any member, hence the procedure that we adopted.
Mr. President.
Senator Zubiri.
Therefore, that motion that I made was only for today.
Okay.
We can
That
go
is-
back to traditional practice.
That is the understanding.
Thank you very
are
much,
correct,
Mr.
Senator Zubiri.
Thank you for the clarification, Mr. President, Mr. Majority Leader.
Majority Floor Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, some administrative matters, Mr. President. May I move, Mr. President, that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the 5th session, Tuesday, August 5, 2025, and consider the same as approved. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion of the Majority Leader is approved.
Mr. President, with the consent of the body and noting that for some measures this shall lead to a third committee referral, and upon consultation with the minority and conformity of the chairperson of the Committee on Games and Amusement, I move for the secondary committee referral and or change of secondary committee referral, as the case may be, on the following measures concerning anti-online gambling to the Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies, while the prior secondary referrals will now be third committee referral. This is in view of the measures' implications on the financial and banking system, particularly with respect to fund transfers and other financial transactions associated with online gambling platforms. These are Senate Bill number 30, 47, 57, 142, proposed Senate Resolution number 12, proposed Senate Resolution number 19, and the privilege speech of Senator Zubiri delivered last July 30, 2025. I so move, Mr. President.
The understanding is the lead committee will still be the Committee on Games. The majority leader simply changed the secondary
Yes,
committees.
Mr. President,
But
that
the-
is correct.
May we know if there is a third committee being referred to?
Majority leader.
Sorry? What's the question?
If the third committee is Ways and Means, we have no problem with that. But if the third committee, as I read it, is the banks, that does not fall in the Rule
It's the second.
10, Section 15.
That's the second, Mr. President,
Second, not the third.
not
Your
the
Honor.
third.
So there are only two committees. Referral.
Three, Mr. President.
Three. What is the third?
The third is the Ways and Means, Mr.
Yeah, no problem with that. What about the others? I have a list here of your PS 19 and the privilege speech of Senator Zubiri referred to 4?
Including the privilege speech, Mr. President, of Senator Mig Zubiri.
You are referring it to 4 committees?
Three.
Three committees
only, Mr.
and not
President.
Ways and Means and
Banks and
not Ways and
games
Means
and
or
amusement,
Finance.
Mr. President.
Yeah,
Games
but
and amusement
if
being
it's
the
not
lead
Ways
committee,
and
Mr.
Means or
President.
Finance and you go beyond 2, you refer it to the Committee on Rules. That's the procedure.
That's why, Mr.
Yes,
President,
not the
we
banks,
are.
not the committees.
Yes, Mr. President, that's the reason why we are asking the consent of the minority, Mr. President. If it is not okay with the minority, Mr. President, I will
Your Honor, the reason why it's the majority leader that's making the motion with the consent of the body is precisely because the request for additional committees was referred to the Committee on Rules, and it's the Committee on Rules now acting on that request with the permission of the body, of course.
It is now the Committee on Rules asking for the permission
Yes,
because it was
that is correct.
originally referred to you already.
Yes,
Your
Mr.
Honor.
All right,
President.
and, we were not informed.
Thank you. Thank you for your understanding, Your Honor.
I told you.
Any objection
I told
to
you.
the motion of the majority leader? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President,
Before recognizing the majority floor leader, Chair would like to correct the case number it mentioned earlier. The record should reflect that the motion pertained to case number 003-2025. The correction is so ordered to be reflected into the records. Majority leader.
yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, August 11, 2025.
Before
moved,
acting
Mr.
on the motion of the majority leader, Chair would like to take this opportunity to thank the members of the chamber, both majority and minority, for your presence, patience, forbearance, and magnanimity that we were able, in such a way that we were able to dispose and vote on this difficult matter of national interest in the most pleasant manner, form, shape, and size. Thank you very much. Is there any objection to the motion to adjourn? Hearing none, session is hereby adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, 11 August 2025. Thank you once again and good evening.
Thank you, Mr. President.